Okay, so this is a review for Illustrator, which is somewhat of a different beast than Photoshop, and it's definitely going to be a lot less tools that you guys use. And the artwork you create is going to be a lot different. So you can see here, everything is much sharper, it's very graphic. This is the type of stuff that Illustrator excels at. So when you want to start something, you can just go File, New. Under Profile, you can say Film and Video if you want again. That'll automatically put things into pixels. I'm just going to start with something basic. It doesn't really matter right now. Alright. Whoa! Hold up. I think I have something weird going on with my settings. Units, pixels. I want my artboard to be... Let's see here. Yeah, you guys aren't going to have these settings different because I've worked in this before, so I have all sorts of weird things going on. There we go. This is what we want, right? So it's giving me a bunch of guide markers because I picked film video. I can always tell it to turn off under view. There we go, hide guides. So I hid some of them anyways. And I think, no, it's not in here. That's okay. I want these guides. So in Illustrator, got a little bit of different stuff here. In that you're not going to be bringing in pictures and erasing backgrounds and, you know, changing colors and things like that. It's all based on objects, whether it's shapes or lines or things like that. So, for example, the text is very similar, but if I draw a rectangle, I'm going to change it. This is a rectangle tool right here. It says rectangle tool. And I'm going to double click, whoops, and change the color to something different. There we go, blue. Right, and I draw this rectangle here. And you can see there's two different colors. This is the fill color. The one that's a solid box is the fill color. The one that's got a hole in the middle is the stroke color. That's this outline right here that we can barely see. Now, I can select this, and just like in Photoshop, properties show up here. But they're not just properties for your tools. They're properties for things you have selected. So I have an object selected, and I can change its properties right here, live. So you can see I'm making the stroke bigger, so you can see it better. I can change the colors for it up here as well as here, only up here I have this limit, right? I can change it to, you know, like one of a few things, but not really. Let's see here. I can change the opacity of an entire object. One thing I can't do, though, is change the opacity really of part of it. Like, I can't put a semi-transparent hole in the middle of this. It's not how Illustrator works. You can always, without getting any special tool, as long as you just have an item selected with your selection tool, which looks like the move tool from Photoshop, you can always resize things. You can always rotate them around if you hover over the corner. So everything that you could do in the free transform in Photoshop, where you had to actually go like get the tool, here you can just do. This right here is a fancy thing to change the corners, so you can make them a little bit rounded. You just pull on this dot until it pulls out a little bit. There we go. So you can see whatever graphics you create, Illustrator's really good at keeping them live and making them very easily editable, and also very easily copyable. Copy, paste, paste. Right? I can make a ton of them. They're not connected. These are all separate now. I can change one and keep, you know, the other two the same. There we go. But the real power in Illustrator comes in using this tool right here, your direct selection tool. I might call it the sub-selection tool. I can use this to select one of these little dots around the outside. Those are called anchor points. And I can change the shape directly. Right? So you can get pretty crazy and detailed in there real quick. I'm not going to expect that much of you guys doing this in this class, but for those of you who are inclined and would like to use Illustrator to its full potential, just everyone should know that this is what the key to vector artwork is, right? You have a dot, you have a dot, and then the program draws a line between the two. I could zoom in here forever, and you can see it's always a smooth line. Remember in Photoshop you had all those steps? This is what vector artwork is. Dot, dot, and an equation to get from one dot to the other. And it redraws itself no matter how you change things. It just redraws it. And so you can always scale, you can always change color, you can always change shape. You can always alter things any way you want. Let me think. These points, if they have this little handle right here, that's called a Bezier handle. It controls how much it's curved. If you don't see one there, it's because it's a linear anchor point. And that's what these two things are. If you click on the rounded looking one, it gives you these handles. If you click on the pointy looking one, it takes them away, so you get a straight line. So that's how you can change between curved and straight lines. Let's see, the only other tool I really want to show you is this one right here, the pen tool. If you want to add a point, you'll see a little plus sign next to the pen. That's how you add a point. If you want to subtract a point, you hover over the point, you'll see a little minus next to the pen. Subtract a point. If you want something to maybe not have a fill, you just want the outline, that's what this little white box with a slash through it is. So you would bring the fill to the front and you'd select that white box with the red slash. It's sort of like the no symbol, and you'd get no fill. You could do the same thing if you wanted no stroke, but in order to get to the stroke you have to click on it, and so it's kind of, you know, above the square, and then you get rid of the stroke. The other nice thing about Illustrator is, let me zoom out. Zooming in and out is the same in Illustrator as in Photoshop. Control plus and control minus. You should just learn the hotkey for it. It's the same in almost every program ever. Also spacebar to get your hand tool so you can pan around. I just, you know, hold down space and then I click and drag and I can move this around. So I've got this stuff overlapping. In Photoshop, if you do that all on the same layer, these things kind of smush together and then separating them is kind of impossible. If I go to my layer, if I go over to my layers panel, which is second from the bottom, you'll see there's layer 1, they're all on the same layer. But if you twirl down this caret, which means click on it so that it's pointing downwards, you'll see each of the 3 items. You can actually use this little circle to select them, and Illustrator considers them all separate. You can make them individually invisible if you wanted to. I think, yeah, you can lock them individually, or you can lock the whole layer if you'd like to. So you can still have separate layers in Illustrator, and it's not a bad idea if you have something really complex, but it's not as necessary because you can always retroactively move things around. I can use the same create new layer button right down there, and then all I have to do is just click this, drag it till I'm hovering over layer 2 and I let go, and now suddenly this is on layer 2 and these are on layer 1. So if you're getting really complex stuff, having multiple layers can help you, but you can always retroactively move things to different layers, unlike Photoshop. Alright, the last tool, well, a couple last tools. There is a paintbrush. It only uses one color, as you can see, unless you close it off, I think. Oh no, it won't. Yeah, so this is, I don't use this that much in here unless you're, you know, because you don't have as much control over it. I mean, it basically just makes a whole bunch of random anchor points to kind of get the shape that you want, and you know, it doesn't paint the way you're going to be used to in Photoshop. Also, I don't even use the eraser tool, to be completely honest, because it's not going to behave right. Oh, wrong layer. Yeah, it's not going to behave the way you think it will. So I usually stick with, did it put something there? Oh no, it didn't. I stick with the pen shape. Text works exactly the same. You take the text tool, you type something, you go to another tool in order to keep the text, and you can always, you know, change this afterwards. You can change the font size. You can change the color, right? You got color over here. I can make it red if I want to. But it's not like before we had to double click on it and select it to change it. Just single clicking on it and holding it will let you change it. Stay away from the eraser. Stay away from the paint bucket tool. It's in here somewhere. They don't work the same, and there's no reason for us to get into them now. Let's see here. Yeah, pen, text, shape. Those are the big ones you want to stick with. The last thing I will point out is that you can apply a gradient to something. You would have to use this gradient panel over here, and you would select, all right, I want a gradient in the middle, so you select the fill type of gradient, in this case linear, and then it's just like in Photoshop where you double click one end and it tells you that you don't have any colors. There we go. The color picker is very different from what we're used to in Photoshop because we're dealing with print colors, so they kind of control the amount of red, the amount of green, the amount of blue. It's a lot harder to kind of make things light or darker the way we're used to. Just takes a little bit of getting used to. Let's see. Green, I don't know, I'm just choosing random colors at this point. There we go. So we got a nice green to blue gradient going on. And what's funny is it doesn't look even though it kind of technically is. Like, that is in the middle, but the blue is stronger than the green, especially since green has blue in it. So I can always kind of like move this off to the side a little bit. What matters is what it looks like, not what technically it is. So if you were to hand that into a client, they'd be like, "Well, it's more blue than it is green." They're not wrong. You just have to kind of work with that. All right, so that's Illustrator. Like I said, I would limit the tools you go into with this. They get very complex very quickly. So yeah, paint bucket, eraser, pencil, these kinds of things. I would stay away from that because they don't behave.